The United States currently finds itself in an increasingly awkward strategic deadlock. Despite commanding the most formidable naval force on the planet, featuring 11 aircraft carrier strike groups, a fleet of 300 warships, and an arsenal of cutting-edge aircraft and missiles, Washington remains unable to secure the passage of a single drop of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. A military giant versus a geographic bottleneck. The Strait of Hormuz has become a recurring nightmare for U.S. military planners. Since the launch of Operation Fury, the U.S. military claims to have neutralized over 50 Iranian vessels and crippled much of Tehran's coastal radar network. With 2 carrier strike groups currently choking Iran's primary maritime arteries, the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb, and a 3rd strike group currently steaming across the Atlantic. This represents the largest American naval blockade since World War II. Yet, the reality on the water tells a different story. Over 100 tankers remain anchored outside the strait, with not a single captain willing to risk the transit. Consequently, Brent crude prices have surged from $70 to over $100 per barrel, while insurance premiums for a single passage have skyrocketed to $4 million. While the global economy reels, the mighty U.S. Navy finds itself in a tense standoff on the high seas. The math of deterrence. The crisis in the Strait of Hormuz isn't a question of firepower, it's a question of mathematics. At its narrowest point, the strait is 21 miles wide. While that sounds expansive, commercial shipping must adhere to a traffic separation scheme, TSS. This consists of 2 2-mile wide lanes separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. In effect, the critical highway is only 6 miles wide. This narrow corridor handles 20% of the world's petroleum liquids, 20% of the global liquefied natural gas, LNG, supply, 1/3 of the world's fertilizer trade. The 90% success trap. Despite half a month of sustained air and sea strikes that have decimated Iran's conventional defenses, destroying 300 missile launchers and paralyzing 200 anti-aircraft systems, the strait remains effectively closed. The problem for the Pentagon is not how much of Iran's military has been destroyed, but what remains. In the world of maritime escort, 90% security is equivalent to 0 security. A single hit on a tanker is catastrophic. Bridging the gap between 90% and 100% safety is a chasm the U.S. has yet to cross. The invisible threat, mines and mountains. Before the first bombs fell, Tehran had already begun seeding the waters. U.S. intelligence confirms the presence of dozens of contact, mobile, and bottom induction mines scattered across shipping lanes, with an estimated stockpile of 2.000 to 6.000 mines. Iran has created a lethal obstacle course. Even without military interference, experts suggest it would take months to fully clear the strait. Furthermore, the Iranian coastline is dominated by the Zagros Mountains, a rugged terrain of ridges, caves, and tunnels. For 4 decades, the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, has prepositioned mobile missile launchers within this natural fortress. These units can emerge from tunnels, fire, and relocate within minutes, with Iranian cruise missiles skimming just 1.5 to 2 meters above the water at high speeds, and ballistic missiles re-entering the atmosphere at speeds exceeding Mach 15. The flight time to the shipping lanes is mere seconds. A defenseless tanker, carrying 2 million barrels of oil, would become a floating inferno upon impact. A war of attrition. Closing the strait is a double-edged sword for Tehran. Iran exports roughly 1.4 million barrels of oil per day, almost all of which must pass through this very bottleneck. Some Western military analysts argue that the U.S. doesn't need to force entry. They are betting that Iran's economy will collapse first, forcing a diplomatic concession. However, that may be wishful thinking. Compared to the fragile complexity of the global economy, Iran's resistance economy may prove more resilient. For now, the battle for the Strait of Hormuz remains a high-stakes game of chicken with no clear end in sight.